Hi everybody and welcome to Weekend Headlines. Mark, a lot to talk about. I suppose the first thing I'd like to talk about is the Rassie Erasmus story, broken with impeccable sources from Rapport, that he's looking to go to England.
Yeah, I mean, he flew over to Scotland this week to play against, to watch Scotland play against England, and went and said hello to Eddie Jones. And on that basis, he was in talks with the Rugby Football Union to take over from Eddie Jones. You kind of texted me and said, what truth is there to that? I hadn't even seen the story. I WhatsApped him. He said, absolutely not, never, it won't happen. Opened his own Twitter account and posted a video of his World Cup speech to a team and said, what would I say to any other team that I would coach? You know, so his heart is in South Africa. He came back from Munster. He's got a 6-year contract as the director of rugby. A lot of disruption aimed at South Africa. I don't think the world has ever seen South Africa this calm after a World Cup. The presidency is settled, Super Rugby settled, our rugby is settled at the moment. We are the world champions, and big elections in May in World Rugby. And there's a lot of different factions at play when it comes to a global season, North versus South. And the New Zealand-South Africa alliance has been very strong over the last decade. It's consistently been good for 25 years, but the last decade especially. And it's a bit of a divide and rule game at the moment. Put a bit of angst among the Kiwis. South Africa will pull out of SANZAAR and go north. There's been a lot of speculation for the last decade about that. It's not realistic at the moment.
Why? Tell us why.
We're bound to the SANZAAR contract to 2025. We've started to play in the Northern Hemisphere market through the Cheetahs and the Kings in Pro 14. There's talk that will go to a Pro 18 and the likes of Griquas or the Pumas may be involved. But very much for now, our top 4 teams will be settled in the Southern Hemisphere in Super Rugby. And there's a feeling from a commercial point of view and also from a rugby point of view that our rugby would be weak if we weren't playing the All Blacks every year, home and away. And that partnership remains strong. The country that should be the most worried is Australia. They've lost the Fox broadcasting deal. Their rugby's at an all-time low. Just looking at their performances this weekend, you know, the Waratahs were a shambles. Being hammered by the Blues at home by 20 points. The Reds, if they couldn't get past that Lions team, you know, that says it all. And then the Rebels and the Brumbies. I mean, the Brumbies are 2 from 2, but they played Australian opposition. Yeah. So I don't think Dave Rennie realizes just what he was walking into. But yeah, dominating. I always love it when it's the first week of February because, you know, then everything is rugby. A report is front page, back page rugby. And it's always close, impeccable sources when it comes to things. But Rassie Erasmus going nowhere. We spoke about it before we went on air. It would be suicide if he ever went and did a Jake White and said that he was interested in coaching another team. He's kind of bonded this whole nation through what it means to be South African, and he's got a fantastic future here if he wants it as director of rugby.
Yeah, a bit irresponsible really in terms of journalism to go with that headline. I know it's sensations themselves, but it had quite a few people upset on Sunday, the news that Rassie might coach England.
Yeah, I think also if he's so Proudfoot went straight over and he's the forwards coach, and then, you know, people who are not in the know think all of a sudden, well, there could be truth to this. But, you know, when he went to Munster, he went there out of frustration because he wasn't allowed to take charge of the national team as head of the high performance unit. Heineke Meyer said he won't report into Rassie. He reports into the CEO. So he had built the under-20s, he had built the 7s with Neil Powell. He'd kind of put all the structures in place, started getting a good vibe going with the Super Rugby coaches, but felt he wasn't allowed to take control of the national team. That changed when they said he would come back. And when he came back, Alistair Coetzee was still the Boks coach. The difference was Alistair would report into him. Alistair said he refuses to, he reports into the CEO, and that's why Alistair kind of eventually went. So he's worked the perfect job for him.
Well, I think Alistair went because he was a useless coach.
That as well. He's worked the perfect job for him, and again, he's got 3 young kids who he had to make a decision then. They either stay in Ireland and he sees out 4 or 5 years with Munster and they're schooling, or they come back to South Africa. They've come back, they settled, he's particularly happy. And what I have enjoyed is that he's been so low-key post the World Cup. You just don't see him anywhere. You don't hear from him. But you know he was at the office on the 7th of January working. So yeah, I mean, but it got everyone in a tiz, and
rightfully so. I mean, I couldn't think, being a Welshman, I couldn't think of anything worse than losing our coach to England.
But what I enjoyed was he's not really been on social media per se,
no.
But that he launched his own account yesterday, He immediately confirmed it was him, and then he put that World Cup winning
Confirmed that it was him that opened that account. Yeah.
It's an official account. And then he put a clip of the 2-minute speech he gave to the guys pre the World Cup final, which is very inspiring. And to say, here's the authenticity, and it's not happening. I'm not coaching England. I'm not in talks with England at all. I'm the director of rugby at South Africa. So he put that out immediately, kind of responded to me, put it out immediately as well. And what I enjoyed was that he didn't play a game there and let it be up in the air and kind of, and like he said as well, he said agents will talk crap and people think he's off contract because he's no longer the Springbok coach, but he's not off contract because he's been employed for 6 years. His contract was a 6-year contract as director of rugby.
Yeah. And it was Rassie's choice to step down as coach, and I believe.
Yeah, and I mean, he addressed the sponsors the other day and he kind of, him and Jacques were both there and they explained exactly how the role is going to work. And he said, ultimately, he takes responsibility for the results. He takes responsibility for the team selections and the strategy. And Jacques, your day-to-day kind of Springbok coach, and you'll grow in the role. He said, but nothing really has changed in terms of his involvement. It's not that he's taking a backseat from Springbok rugby at all. Yeah. It's just he's increasing the powers and the responsibilities for Jacques Nienaber. Yeah. But for now, he's very much the guy in charge. And that's why he was at Murrayfield on Saturday watching Scotland play England. And he said he was a lot wiser after that game as well.
Yeah, that was a pretty interesting game. But, great news that Rassie isn't going anywhere. Thanks for reaching out to Rassie yesterday and letting us try and get some truth to that story. So good news, Rassie's staying. You can take it from us. He's not going anywhere.
And we're in the Rugby Championship for the next 5 years at least.
Yes. Yeah, so no need to read any of those headlines.
And for those who ask, you can't play in both. I asked Mark Alexander that yesterday. Yeah. Said, why can't we put one team in the 6 nations or 7 nations, one team in the Rugby Championship? We have a team in Europe as it is. And he said, you're not allowed to play in both competitions currently at the moment. Yeah. So, but he was also a little bit naughty when he spoke to the other media and when he said, well, you can never rule out anything. So I think he's also hedging his bets a little bit to strengthen South Africa's position when it comes to the broadcast deal. And if they do have a foot in the Northern Hemisphere, it means they are a global player as opposed to just specific to the Southern Hemisphere. But it's, I even read the Daily Mail piece. It was so weakly put. Things are falling nicely into place, says an unnamed source. That was the gist of the story. Yeah.
I'm so sick of journalism and unnamed sources and impeccable sources and all this other sources. Anyway, lesson learned. Super Rugby this weekend. No team I believe has shut out 2 teams in a row in Super Rugby.
No, and the Stormers in their history have done it twice. Both times 33-0 wins, but I think it was like 6 or 7 years apart. To go back to back, to beat the Hurricanes 27-0 and to win a derby 13-0, and they played bloody well and they defended well. And the critique I saw on social media again, and the nonsense that was aimed at Damian Willemse. Half the people want him axed again. It's we've got such exciting talent. We've got such wonderful players. Let them play week in and week out. Let them make mistakes. And the one thing that Rassie said in that video to the players, he said the only way we're going to win this game, this final, is if you play and there's no ego. So I don't want 50 actions and 46. Well, okay, and you made 4 mistakes. He said, I want 130 actions and 40 mistakes. That's the way we're going to win it. Get up and do it again. Get up and do it again. So we need to really kind of be more patient with the good players in this country. We need to also say the Stormers were diabolical for how long? They've won 2 games at home. They've played bloody well. They've kept 2 teams scoreless. Kudos to that.
No, it is remarkable that the people like have a voice now on social media to criticize. If you'd asked anybody before the start of the season, would you take 2 wins and not concede any points? Someone would have told you you're dreaming. It's never going to happen. And what's happened? They've scored. They haven't given up a single point. It's not a good Bulls team that they beat, but it was a physical team, and it's a local derby. You got to put everything in perspective, but I think social media and a lot of the trolls lose perspective.
Well, I think also let's just look at how well they did play against the Hurricanes, and we said worst Hurricanes team we've ever seen. They went and beat the Jaguar Warriors a week later. Yeah. So they didn't play well in Cape Town, but maybe the Stormers also made them look that poor.
No, let's look at the form guide from the Sharks as well. I mean, the Sharks, the Bulls gave the Sharks a good game. The Sharks went over and destroyed the Highlanders.
There was 1 point in at 16:15 with 3 minutes to go in Durban. And then the Sharks go to Dunedin and absolutely blow apart the Highlanders. 27-3 up at halftime, 33. Highlanders, a couple of late tries, but a 20-point win, first week up in New Zealand. Fantastic effort, and that game surprised me. Yeah. I had a shocking weekend in terms of returns, 3 from 7. But the two I got right was the Crusaders to lose to the Chiefs, and then obviously the Stormers to win. But hugely impressed with the way the Sharks played in a very attacking, free-flowing game. And what's been encouraging from a South African point of view is really have we gone over post a World Cup year and blown away 2 New Zealand teams straight up at the start of the season. It's normally the reverse. So yeah, the Sharks exceeded any expectation I had there. Stormers consistent with that. And the Chiefs under Warren Gatland, immediately you see his impact. And for them to get the win against the Crusaders in the way they did, they were 12-3 down after 10 minutes.
Yeah, and they bent, but they didn't break. I mean, they absorbed a lot of pressure. Very reminiscent of a Welsh defence. You know?
Yes, and if you go back when he took over Wales 12 years ago, how he brought the hunger and the mongrel back as he started to build the class players that he wanted, and you just see so many of those elements. Like a year ago, the Chiefs would have been blown away. 12-3 down after 10 minutes, it would have been a 40-20 game. And they just wouldn't go away. And eventually got into the game. Once they got into the game, they started getting confidence. And Warren Gatland's big thing is conditioning. And Wales are probably one of the fittest teams in the world in the last 3 years that he was there. And this Chiefs side looks so well conditioned. They get stronger as the game goes. This flanker Boschia that he seems to have found is playing more core-like rugby, and they're scoring more tries, and they're playing this Northern Hemisphere kind of game, but in New Zealand. I've been very impressed with them. The Crusaders will be there and thereabouts, but from a South African perspective, definitely the Stormers, and let's hope the Sharks can sustain this momentum. Yeah. They really have surprised me.
Yeah, well done to the Sharks. What a great result. Speaking of Gatland, let's get on to the Six Nations, and huge disappointment for me was Wales against Ireland. Wales were diabolical.
They were, and it's just like, I think they may have believed their press from that Italian shutout, 42-0. I really expected just a bit more fire in the belly, and for them to shake that Irish team a little bit. And I thought Ireland were comfortable winners at the end. 24-14 didn't even do justice to the dominance. They never looked like they were going to lose that game.
No, they didn't. There was that try that I thought was a try, which wasn't a try, which would have made it a lot closer. But no, Wales were nowhere. It was embarrassing to be a Welsh fan on Saturday.
And you go back to that opening week when Clive Woodward said, or Sir Clive Woodward, he said, France, England, whoever wins this one will win it. He said, and if France wins, they will win the championship or they'll come last. They were a typical French team, blew Italy away in the first half and then looked like they were bringing them right back into the game. Yeah. But nice to see them 2 from 2. And England, I really thought that game was going to end at 3-3. I had load shedding for the last 50 minutes. I was on the phone to you asking what's going on in that. Yeah. And then to see England get that late try and then to call it one of the great wins. I mean, geez.
One of the great wins.
Yeah. They really are becoming boring, post that World Cup semi-final win against the All Blacks.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, they're an arrogant bunch, huh?
Yeah, and the replacement prop who scored it, he called the sausage critics and said, take that now, what do you say? You beat Scotland, for God's sake. You beat Scotland by a score. Scotland ranked 8th in the world at the moment. So lots for them to work on. It's going to be a cracker against Ireland. I know Ireland are going to Twickenham, but Andy Farrell up against Owen Farrell, that alone is worth the price. Imagine the talk in that household on the Friday night.
I can only imagine. And last, let's touch on the tennis that was in Cape Town. Did you go?
I never went. I did speak to some people who went, and the reaction I got, they said they needed binoculars to see anything. They thought it was a great occasion for who was there, but never felt that they were at a tennis match in a rugby stadium. It was windy. It was clearly an exhibition match, and they said so the range of skills were there from the people, but a lot of criticism about the handing over of a Springbok jersey to Roger Federer and how it played out, but not to Rafa Nadal. Even though he did get a signed Boks jersey afterwards in the change room, people felt that both of them should have given a Boks jersey. I know they're linked to Federer as his mom's South African. He's always supported the Boks. But it certainly just anointed him as the hometown favourite before the start of the game. And I think it was one game that he was always going to win it in 3 sets. Wonderful that they were here. But yeah, see it for what it was, an exhibition match.
Yeah, I'm getting a bit tired of the Sia Khaleesi show. He appears everywhere.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, that Springboks squad won that World Cup, and Rassie Erasmus and a big management team were influential, and every other player's just got on with it at the moment, and he's just playing rugby again. And I'm not necessarily saying it's Sia's fault. Maybe he's just been put forward, but every time you pick up a newspaper, you go on social media, on a television thing, it's Sia with someone in the country, it's Sia welcoming them, and it's unfortunate he got injured, but I think Rassie and Dobbo would only want to see Sia one place, and at the moment that's the bottom of a ruck, or making an offload or making a tackle, and leading from the front as a Springbok captain. But yeah, I think maybe for his own sanity, they also need to pull him back a bit and kind of let him get on with doing what he does well, and that's play rugby.
Yeah, I fully agree. It's I know it must be a taxing schedule because, like I say, I see him everywhere. But anyway, Mark, thanks for coming in. I really appreciate it. And let's look forward to another good week in sports.
Thanks, man.